This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
We'd like to dedicate today's shir Ili Nishma Sero Bas Yeshaya on her yahrzeit. On Hashem should have an aliyah. She should be a Melitzi Yeshara for her family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. We also learn Refuah Shalema from my Rebbetzin, Miriam Liba Bas Devora. Before Yosef revealed himself to his brothers after 22 years, he said, "Hoitziu kol ish me'alai." He sent out all of the palace guards and everyone from the room, the jesters, the minstrels, the servers out. Almost an unheard of. It would be similar to, President Obama sending out all his Secret Service men. I don't know if you ever witnessed a presidential visit. Have any of you ever done that? There is a reason to go to see the president when he comes. The Gemara tells us that if a melech comes, a goyish melech, you should go and see it, so that be'ezus Hashem, when we're zoyka to once again have a melech b'Yisrael, you will see the difference between a Jewish king and a goyish king. Also, there is a reason to go to make a bracha. There is a special bracha that we make on a king. Rav Moshe held, there is a machlokes about this, but Rav Moshe Feinstein held that you make the bracha on the President of the United States. The criteria for making a bracha on a person is if he has the koyach lahamis ulahachayis, to put to death and to give life. The President of the United States has that power. So he has the power to lahachayis because he could issue a presidential pardon. Somebody is on death row, he could issue a presidential pardon and exonerate the person. So that's a koyach lahachayis. The koyach lahamis is as Commander-in-Chief of the American Army, he can issue an executive order and send in troops to strike, which of course results in people's death a lot of times. So he has a koyach lahamis too. So anyway, if the president would send out, I remember Clinton came to Staten Island. I remember President Ford came to Borough Park. I saw 3 presidents, but I remember when Clinton came to Staten Island, there was so many secret police. It was like a little city of people. It was unbelievable. And it would be like the president saying, "Everybody leave me unprotected." So we know that Yosef HaTzadik did it because he didn't want his brothers to be embarrassed in front of all these people. Right? He's going to say, "I'm Yosef Hashem Bechartem Oisi Heina. I'm Yosef who you sold me." And he didn't want to embarrass them in front of all of these goyim. Now, the Medrash tells us that at that moment Yosef put himself in great sakana, because the brothers were all of mighty physique. Remember, 2 of the youngest ones, Shimon and Levi, destroyed the whole town of Shechem single-handedly. So all 10 of them could have snapped Yosef, and dispatched him to the next world. So they could have finished the job that they tried to do 22 years ago. So he put himself in grave danger. But he didn't care because, like Tamar, it's better to put yourself into a furnace of fire than embarrass someone publicly. And Yosef continued that lesson. But in Yosef's case, it was much more. You know, if you really want to learn Torah the right way, you have to say, let me put myself in this person's shoes and see how I would react. So let's say once in elementary school, you had a friend that really embarrassed you. Really embarrassed you. And now you're in a situation where you're going to cause the other person embarrassment. Will you risk your life to spare that person embarrassment? I mean, think about it. I mean, they lowered him into a pit of snakes and scorpions without his clothing. They stood there, the brothers, and stripped him of his clothing. Talking about embarrassment. They then took him and sold him as a slave. A proud child of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's a royal family. They sold him as a slave to a group of uncouth midyadim. You know what a great embarrassment that was? And here Yosef is so concerned about embarrassing them that he put his life to risk. So, you know, when you listen to this, you say, you know, what does Hashem really expect from us? Okay, so the first thing you have to know is, you know, I don't know what the main reason why you're here in seminary is. I'm not sure. If it's because that's what girls do after high school, you go to seminary. If it's because it's otherwise when you got in a shidduch, you didn't go to seminary. But I will tell you one reason you really should be here. And that is to develop a Torah mind and heart. It's hard to do that when you're younger. To a certain extent you do. To a certain extent you get inhibitions when you hear all the time in school about the poison of Lashon Hara, when you hear all the time in school about the importance of respecting elders, you know, so it gets into the head. But when you're mature girls, your minds are developed, you need to try to absorb how to look at things the Toru way. And trust me, in many instances, they are very different than looking at things in the American way. I mean, and America relatively has a lot of good ideas. I mean, we as Americans are so spoiled. You know, we live with so many freedoms that we take for granted that just one generation ago, in the time of my father of blessed memory had none of these freedoms. It's, you know, like I spent 1 year in a bungalow colony called Village Green. And there was a wonderful man there. He's a very old man now. His name was Rav Lichtig. He's a Rav in Queens. And what was very special about him was, I mean, one of the things that were very special about him was he knew the Chofetz Chaim personally. and he went to the famous Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin of Rav Meir Shapiro, the author of the Daf Yomi. So he said to me once, Rabbi Weiss, what do you think were the two biggest problems of my youth? Growing up. And I really had no clue. And he told me, number one, the intense poverty. I regularly went to sleep in pain from hunger pains. There never enough to eat. I don't know if you understand what that means. I know I don't. I know when I bench and I say that Hashem gives me food, b'chol eis u'b'chol shah. Now you know what that means? It sounds a little double talk. B'chol eis u'b'chol shah at every time and every hour. Do you know what b'chol eis u'b'chol shah means? B'chol eis means that there's a food for each season. In other words, there's ice water or whatever you drink, ice soda, iced tea, cold malted for the summer. There's hot cocoa and tea and soup for the winter. That's a big thing. That's b'chol eis. What's b'chol shah? You know what b'chol shah means? It means you wake up in the middle of the night, you could go to the refrigerator and get something. It means in between meals, if you're hungry, you go to the bread basket, you go to the cookie jar, you go to the fruit bin, and you have something. You have something b'chol shah. That's something that everybody had. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and he was in Auschwitz. And my father was a very generous man. And when I used to go to a dormitory yeshiva, so when we came home once a month, we were treated like crown princes, because it was such a big thing for my parents that I came home once a month from yeshiva. So we were treated like visiting royalty. And I remember my father said to me, Mommy got steak for you. Sometimes he'd come home on Thursday night. Mommy got steak from you. He says, I don't care if you have 3 steaks. Just finish everything. He could not handle waste of food. When my mother would peel the potatoes, if she would peel the potatoes too thick, he would shudder when he would see her throw away the peels. He said, I want you to know that on those peels that you're throwing away, we lived. It saved our lives. And these are things that we can't even imagine. So he told me, we went to sleep hungry. And the second thing is, he said that the Goyim wanted to hurt us. He said, you had to be careful how you walked home. You couldn't pass the Goyish quarter. Because he said if we passed the Goyish quarter, the Goyish children threw, but they didn't throw rocks at us. They threw glass at us, aiming for our eyes. So that was a regular occurrence. It's something that we can't even imagine. Imagine going out and worrying that guy would throw glass at your eyes. It's just something we can't even imagine. We can't imagine going to sleep hungry. I mean, I didn't like supper tonight. I wasn't in the mood for chicken cutlets. I don't like this cereal. I like a different cereal. That's as far as it gets. Going to sleep hungry, that it's pain that stops us from sleeping. So we live in a malchus shel chesed. There's no question about it. My father told me, he remembers before they were sent to Auschwitz, that as a young boy he wasn't allowed to go to shul because it was a secret shul, and they figured that the children would make noise and give it away. Can you imagine not being allowed to go to shul? I mean, and that's why the idea, the concept of thanking Hashem for going to shul, of thanking Hashem for being able to daven, is foreign to us also. We don't understand that concept. I should thank Hashem. Hashem should thank me. I'm coming to daven. I could have done anything. David HaMelech says, "Ani b'roiv chazdecha avay veisecha." I, in your multitude kindness, come to your house. The idea of thanking Hashem for being able to do mitzvahs, that also is. So, when we learn, we try to develop, and it's not easy, even this business of not embarrassing someone. That's not an American idea. In America, people read about other people's embarrassment. The paparazzi are all over the place trying to catch a picture of a celebrity in an embarrassing way. They get paid thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars if they could catch a star in an embarrassing way, because everybody wants to read about it. It's the antithesis of what the Torah stands for. On the radio, talk show hosts, people call in, they embarrass them in public and say, "That's so stupid what you're saying." It's so to think with the Torah mind and to look at life through Torah lenses and not think like an American is a very big thing. Now, what I just told you is easy. It's easy. We understand as Jews how bad it is to embarrass someone. If a person does it regularly, they lose their afterlife. This is something I don't think is a novelty to you. But I want to talk to you about something else, which is not easy at all. The Torah commands us, "Lo sikaim v'lo sitar." Don't take revenge and don't bear a grudge. It's very hard not to take revenge. Revenge is sweet. But if you had a person who you thought she was your friend, and then you found out that somebody called her up about you, about a shidduch, and your friend said, "Well, you could do better than her. She's very standoffish, a little bit of a snob. But if that's okay by you, then you find out about it. What are you going to do the next time that somebody calls you up about your friend for a shidduch?" So every pore in your body screams to say, "What? That girl? Let me tell you one thing. She badmouths people. I once thought she was my friend. But boy, if you're looking for loyalty," that's what every pore in your body screams to do. And the Torah says that's a lav d'oraisa. You're not allowed to do that. Now that's hard enough. But the lav of leisitar is even harder. Here, your sister got married. You missed a bunch of classes. You didn't have notes. You have a big test. So you go over to your friend, can I borrow your notes for one night? And your friend tells you, first of all, I can't risk you losing my notes. I know you're not so careful with things. I work very hard on my notes. Second of all, why should I give you my notes? You sit in class like a prima donna, you don't take it, all my hard work, and now you want to just take my notes? I'm sorry. You didn't earn it. Okay. About 3 months later, your friend got sick. She missed 4 weeks. And she comes over to you afterwards and said, I was sick, could I borrow your notes? So if you say, after not giving me your notes, I should borrow you my notes, you could stand on top of your head. Even if you paid me $1,000, I wouldn't give it to you. That's Nekava. But you know what Netira is? Netira is, yeah, I'll give you my notes. I'm not like you. I'm not like you. You didn't give me your notes, but I'm not like you. Here. You have a lav there too. And the lav is a lav Netira. What does Netira mean? Well, literally, Netira means waiting. It means that you're not allowed to bear a grudge. The fact that you said it meant you remembered and you stewed about what your friend did. You're not allowed to bear a grudge. Now, how in heaven's name are we expected to live like this? Okay, you'll tell me I can't take revenge. Okay, but mentally I shouldn't even bear a grudge when you did something so not nice to me? How? We're not angels. How does the Torah expect us to do this? The answer is in this week's parsha. It's not, by the way, it's not an easy discipline. And I'm not saying that I've mastered it. But I try to. And I know that it's what the Toru Way is. If anybody ever had a reason for revenge, or bearing a grudge, harboring a grudge, it was Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik. They tore him from his father, from his adoptive mother Bilhah, from the whole family, from a Torah environment. They lowered him first into a pit of snakes and scorpions, and then sold him where he ended up in a dungeon. He ended up in the lunatic house of Potiphar, far away from his family, with no way to figure to ever get back home. If anybody ever harbored feelings of revenge, and at least to stew about a grudge, it's Yosef. So what does Yosef tell the brothers? Let's look at what he tells them when he has them in his clutches. If he wanted them, he could crush them like a nut. He was the second most powerful person in the world. He could do whatever he wanted to them. He could consign them to the quarries as slaves. He could lower them in pits. He could kill them. What does he say to them? Besides being worried that they shouldn't be embarrassed. He says to them, Lo atem shlachtem osieinu, ki im Elokim. You didn't send me here, it was Hashem. Now notice, first of all he said, you didn't send me. But they did. So you didn't. Because if I didn't deserve to be sent here, I wouldn't have been sent. And Elokim is Midas Hadin. He said, I have plenty of time to think about it. I had plenty of time to think about it. I was in a dungeon. I had plenty of time. And I realized I spoke a dibara about you. And I know that I had dreams that Father is going to bow down to me. So I understood that if I was staying home, Father would never bow down to me. So I understood that I had to be sent somewhere else. I understand that it's Hashem that's pulling the strings. When you understand that, and you say anything that happens could only happen because I deserved it to happen. So then that takes away the focus of animosity. Look what you did to me. It wasn't you who did it to me. It was Hashem that did it to me. Now, I don't want you to get confused with the idea that the brothers won't get punished for it. That's a different issue. The brothers did something wrong, and punishment happened throughout the ages because of it. The Asara Haruge Malchus had to die, amongst them Rabbi Akiva, and Paro was doing what was told to Avram Avinu in Brisbane, Abasarim, that Kigeria Zaracha Be'eretz Lo Elohem Va'avodim V'inu Oisam Arba Me'eshona, they will be slaves and afflicted. So Paro could have said, look, God, I just did what you planned to do to them. Why are you punishing me? And the answer is that yes, that's what was supposed to happen. But you did it, and you did wrong, and therefore you're going to be punished. Also, there's a second reason, because Paro couldn't say I was doing what you wanted, Hashem, because Paro denied Hashem. Mi Hashem asher eshma mekel lo yadati es Hashem. I don't know Hashem. But be that what it may, if a person says, this didn't happen because my friend did it to me, it happened because I deserved it to happen. So that mitigates a lot of the feelings of animosity to the person, because it didn't happen because of that person. And then a person reflects, so why did it happen to me? What was the midah keneged midah that caused it to happen to me? You know, I wanted to be a friend with this girl, and she snubbed me. Who did I snub when I was growing up? That's why it happened. It didn't happen because that girl is necessarily such a not nice girl. It happened because Hashem needed it to happen to me because I deserved it. And sometimes it happens because it brings about great good. Like Yosef HaTzadik also said, don't be sad, because I was sent here to keep us all alive. And look, I became viceroy. As a matter of fact, the Sfas Emes says, it says, Asher mechartem osihein lemitzrayim. You sent me, you sold me. So Asher sometimes means Isher. You should be threatened, like thank you. Like it says about Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Asher shibartu, you broke the luchas. Thank you for breaking the luchas. Isher. So Yosef said, thank you for selling me. Look what happened. Do you know that Yosef was the longest reigning monarch in the history of the Jewish people? That's a medrash. Yosef became viceroy in Egypt at 30, and he was viceroy until the day he died at 110. He was a viceroy for 80 years, the longest reigning ruler in the history of the Jewish people. And that was all caused by the brother. There was no way he was going to go down to Egypt. But you understand, this is a very Jewish way to look at things. Very Jewish way. Your sister gets you so upset about something. She's just a jealous sister. And instead you say, why did Hashem give me that aggravation? And if a person looks at it that way, it shifts off a lot of the negative feelings to the sister. Because, and again, that doesn't exonerate the sister in Hashem's eyes. But you're not in the judgment business. You leave that to Hashem. Ki hamishpat le'elikim. But it causes us to think, why did this happen to me? You understand the concept that I'm sharing with you? You have any questions on it? Again, but this is an example of looking at things through the lenses of Torah. Because the normal way to look at it is, this person did this to me, I'm never going to talk to them again. I'm deleting them from my contacts. I don't have anything to do with the person. Now, it's complex. Because if a person is a bad person, in other words, a person doesn't have Torah ideals, then we don't necessarily have to do with that person. It says, after all, we daven every day, distance me from a bad person and a bad friend. A lot of people were ruined in life. A lot of marriages were killed because of bad friends. You always have to pick your friends wisely. Not only that, do you know that one of the ways we check out a young lady or a young man for our children was to see who their friends are? There's a famous Gemara where on a rooftop they saw the zarzir bird. Now the zarzir is a bird that's called the starling. Now it's not easy to tell if a bird is kosher or not. You see, the Torah doesn't say which birds are kosher, which birds are not. It gives different simonim, signs in a kosher bird, but they're very complicated. And it's not like an animal has to have split hooves and it has to chew its cud, regurgitate its food, then it's kosher. A bird is much more complicated. So they asked Rabbah if the zarzir is a kosher bird. And he said, I don't know. But he said, I'll tell you what to do. Follow it around and see what birds it hangs out with. So they saw that the zarzir is always hanging out with the raven, the orave, the crow, which is a very not kosher bird. It's one of the birds in the Torah that Torah says is not kosher. The Torah gives us a list of birds that are not kosher, but it's not only those birds. It's birds, all other birds also that have its traits. So the Torah says the hoopoe is not kosher, the pelican is not kosher, the owl is not kosher, the hawk is not kosher. So he says the raven is not kosher. He says the starling hangs around with the raven. Oh, it's not kosher. So you could tell a person by who their friends are. So if a person has bad ideals, let's say a person is not modest, doesn't have modest for a girl, modest qualities are very important. But not just that that's the way she was brought up. Okay, the way she was brought up, she can't know any better. But she was brought up right, and she threw off modesty. That's a very bad influence. That's a very bad influence. She says, look, she tells you, I feel so free. I feel so unshackled. I could express myself. I like the way people look at me. Those are such anti-Torah ideals. So that's not a good friend to have. But I'm talking about a person that's a good friend. but they did something wrong to you, something maybe even nasty. Instead of putting all your thrust on what that person did to you, which will create the need for vengeance and, of course, to bear a grudge, you say, why did Hashem do this to me? What did I do to deserve this? And by doing that, it's a lot easier to fulfill Loisikaim, Loisitar, and Loisisnes Achicha Bilvavecha. Have a very good day, everybody.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.